The yoga, oh, thank you for recording. Thank you for joining the presentation on bringing this wonderful method that we are all familiar with into schools. My name is Shanthi or Erin Haddock, and I am a yoga for the special child practitioner. And I am a part 1 program teacher trainer. I'm also a certified yoga therapist and a certified yoga teacher. So I thought before we began, and I know there's a couple people still joining in audio here, but I wonder if I could get kind of a sense of who has worked in classes before, in schools before. So if you've ever worked in a school, whether it's teaching yoga before or in another capacity, could you just give me a little hand raise and let me know you've worked in a school? Okay, a few people. So great. So hopefully for some of us, this will be all new information. And for those of you who have worked in schools before, I hope that I can give you a little bit of extra ideas about bringing the method into schools. And if not, it'll be a nice refresher for you. So I'm going to start with about 30 minutes of lecture, and then I'm going to give about 10 minutes at the end for questions and answers, because everyone's situation is really individual, just like the kids that we work with. Each school is going to be completely different. And so if you have any questions, please feel free to add them in the chat and I'll get to them at the end, or you can ask me at the very end. I'm going to explore my history working in schools to give you a better idea of the many ways that you can bring this method into schools. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to be speaking with you. I'm really humbled to be here among so many amazing speakers and also amazing audience. I know a lot of you are incredibly accomplished, and those of you I don't know, I'm looking forward to getting to know you more later. And special thank you to Hanaka and to Shivakami for inviting me here. I'm really glad to be here. So I have been a yoga for the special child practitioner since 2010, and I started working in a clinic with my mother's clinic. She was a clinical child psychologist and was doing neurofeedback. So I was working in her clinic for about 4 years. And one of my students, his mother asked his school to bring me in to teach yoga in his schools, which is how I got started teaching in a school. I was kind of surprised. I had reached out to them just to come in and teach, maybe a couple times a week. But when I came in to meet, they asked me to come in as a full-time teacher there. So I worked as a full-time teacher in a school from 2014 to 2015. And then after that, I went into my own business contracting in different schools. So I'll come into different schools and provide services a few times a week. I'm speaking in the context of someone who is teaching in the US. So I know that everyone in you're all over the world, and schools are probably going to work a little bit different depending on where you live. But I'll try to give information that's applicable worldwide as best I can. So I'm going to start with explaining various pros and cons of ways to work in schools. So there's 3 ways that I've kind of defined to work in schools. One is, as I mentioned, how I started as an employee, so a full-time employee. The benefits to working as an employee is that the school has a lot of buy-in. So they are really invested in making this program go well. You're there every day, they see you, you get to know the staff. They really want this program to go well, and so you have a lot of support, and you really have their ear. So if you need something, you ask them and usually you can get it. Also, the programming that you're doing is going to be really well implemented in the school. They're going to be looking to utilize you very well, and in as many ways as they can. So you're going to be really integrated not only in as a yoga teacher, but also in the school day. So, creating an environment within the entire school that's more peaceful, that's more calm, stimulating that vagus nerve, like Hinata was talking about, throughout the whole school, which is a really powerful experience, actually, because it kind of makes everything go easier, right? You all have a common language. Everyone understands what yoga is for, and everything you're doing is at that aim. You also have a lot of access to, I'm going to call them stakeholders, which is something you'll often see when you work with schools. So various stakeholders, and by stakeholders, I mean the principal, the director, the headmaster of the school, various teachers, the therapy team, and also students and their parents. So you're going to have a lot more access to these people. You're going to be able to speak to them. You can pop into their office, discuss what you need, collaborate with them. You're usually able to engage parents in the process through school channels. So whether that's by sending letters, participating in parent-teacher events, and just because you're a little bit more a part of the whole school community. You'll also, in most cases, be able to access more student information. So the school that I was working in was a therapeutic day school, and all of the students in the school had what's called in the US as an IEP, or an individualized education plan. So I had access to, reports about what the child's diagnosis is, what other therapies they're having. You have a lot of information about the students. Like Shiva Kavi mentioned before, it kind of goes like this, right? But it informs how you approach the student, and then you can build a relationship a little bit more easily. It also has a lot of stability. So if you're really someone who likes working consistently, throughout the whole school day, Monday through Friday, the whole school year, that would be a really good option for you. So one of the cons, at least from my perspective, about working as a full-time employee in a school is that there's a high amount of oversight over your work. So because you're working under the principal or under a therapy team, they're going to be giving you a lot of feedback about what you're doing and how they want the program to work. And because they're not necessarily yoga teachers, it might kind of conflict with the way that you've been taught how to teach this method. So it means that you'll likely have to adjust the way that your programming works to the overall needs of the school. And it also might mean that you provide services that are not directly related to yoga. So that might mean at the beginning of the school day, helping students come into the classrooms or helping them transition onto the buses at the end of the day, going on field trips, being involved in team meetings. And that might not be a con for you, but it is a whole lot of extra time doing stuff that isn't yoga related. So just something to know. The other thing is that finding schools to teach or to who are willing to hire someone who can teach full-time as a yoga teacher is really tricky. I kind of lucked into this. It was a school, the principal was actually had practiced yoga before and was a big believer and was a very creative thinker. It was a charter school, so they had a lot of flexibility in the way that they brought staff in. But it'll be easier for you if you are willing to work as a classroom aide. So if you are really interested in being a full-time employee, you can always approach a school and say, I'm interested in being, in the US, they call them paraprofessionals, but that may be like a one-to-one aide or a classroom assistant. And you can pitch yourself and say, these are my skills. This is the method that I teach. I'm really passionate about bringing this into the school. I'm willing to work, as a classroom aide or as an assistant teacher, but I would like to be teaching yoga in addition to that role. So that's one way that you can kind of get in if they're not totally convinced at the outset, because they will be convinced once they see the work that you do, believe me. That has always been true. Every time I come into a school, the buy-in happens really quickly when they see the effects of this method. And it's not me, it's the method. I know you all know that. So the other option is to come in as a contractor. Actually, there's 3 options, but the second option is to come in as a contractor. So in the US, at least, the difference between an employee and a contractor is you would be given a W-9 instead of a W-2, which means that you have to withhold your taxes. They don't give you benefits necessarily. They're not withholding your taxes. This is the way I like to work, just personally. You can work as a contractor within the school day, or you can contract as an after-school provider. And I'm going to go into these 2 options in a little bit more depth. So one of the pros to contracting within the school day is that you're still really visible within the school. The teachers get to know you, the staff gets to know you. One of the places that I'm contracting right now, the security guard knows me, the bursar, who is the lady who writes the checks, she knows me. Everybody still knows you, which helps actually a lot, because that connection, that social connection, is really important. People like to see your face, right? They like to know who they're talking to, and it gives you more opportunity to explain what you're doing and why. So you get to know the whole team really well. It's also possible to kind of integrate into the daily life of that school, much like as an employee, because you're there during the school day. So you can impact the whole culture and perspective of the team this way. You're also able to call on the resources of the school a lot more easily. So you can ask staff for help. Often when you're contracting, you're not going to have the ability to look at IEPs or at information because it's protected under HIPAA. So you won't necessarily be able to see if, for example, one of your students recently had a surgery, but you can ask the staff to give you that kind of information so that you're providing the correct services for the kids that you're working with. And a pro for me is that the only requirement when you're a contractor is that you teach yoga. That's your job, right? You're just there to teach yoga. I think also it's easier to separate, right? When you're integrated in the school as a staff member, sometimes you can easily be pulled into the drama of the school. Otherwise, you seem really remote and really distant. But when you come in as a contractor, they know that's your job. You're just there for yoga, and you can just be that for the school, which I find a lot easier. So some of the cons to teaching this way is because you're in this working during the school day, is there's still some oversight over your work. You're probably going to get some feedback about what you're doing and how they want you to do it, which means you'll probably have to make some adjustments to your programming according to the way that the school is set up. And I already mentioned you have less access to information about the students and also to parents. So you will have to glean that information from the rest of the team. You'll also have less stability than working as an employee, right? If they decide, oh, all of a sudden it's not in our budget to have yoga anymore, that means your funding is cut and you have to find somewhere else to teach. Luckily, most of the places we've taught, once they see the effect of yoga, they keep it going, but it's just something to keep in mind, that it's a little bit less stable than working as an employee. So you could also work as a contractor and create your own after-school program. This is a great way to get involved in a new school. You'll be somewhat visible in the school, especially after a few years, and you can develop some working relationships with the team members who are present, but because it's after school, not all team members are going to be present, and it's going to be harder to build that relationship than it would be face-to-face. Generally, you have a more direct relationship with the parents because you're coordinating with them after school care. And so you can contact them directly to set up and to run the program and to get information that you need to know for more smooth functioning. But it's harder to get to know the entire team well, as I mentioned, and to ask for information about how the students are doing in school. You may also have to provide extras. So one of the things I did when I was teaching an after school program was I had to bring snacks. And you have to be mindful also that they're allergy friendly snacks, right? So no nuts, no dairy, no gluten. So applesauce tended to be my backup. But one of the things I noticed when I was teaching the after school program is some of the kids got sent with snacks and some of the kids didn't get sent with snacks. And when you're working with little kids, and some kids have one thing and other kids don't have it, it can be an issue, right? There's conflict there. So you need to make sure that you have those extras, and also to set up the environment. Often you'll be put in a room off where there's lots of toys everywhere. You need to come in and make sure that the space is really set up for yourself before you begin. Also, you're generally on your own to provide the care for the kids. So this is when it becomes really important to limit how many students are in that class. 8 is probably too many for one, depending on the age, how is too many for one person to manage successfully on their own. So you may want to limit the amount of students that you have if you're going to work on your own, or bring another certified yoga for the special child teacher to come in and kind of help redirect and make sure that the environment is safe. It takes a lot of planning and coordination to do this kind of thing. And also attendance can vary because you're setting up this after school program, and in that way it can be a relatively unstable method of employment. So the last way I'm going to talk about, and I don't have too much to say about it because it's mostly just pros, is that you can volunteer. So that's probably the best way to start getting into schools, is to offer yourself as a volunteer. And one of the major pros is you're going to be a hero to that school. They're going to be so excited that you're there. And they generally give you a lot of flexibility in how you teach, especially if you do a good job of explaining the method and why you're doing what you're doing. They're going to give you a lot of leeway to teach the way that you know is the best way to teach. However, it's not paid. So that's something to consider, not to overwhelm yourself with volunteer gigs. If you need I mean, hey, we all need to pay for groceries, right? And for lights. And also as an irregular team member, sometimes communication is a little off. So what I noticed is if there were a day off of school, sometimes I wouldn't get the message and I would show up and school would be closed. So those are the cons. So now I want to talk a little bit about ways to get into the school. So there's 4 ways, and they involve either a direct or an indirect approach. The first 2 I'm going to describe are when the school approaches you. So when the school approaches you directly, that would be a school contacting you for your services. And in my opinion, this is the best way to get into the school, because the school is going to be more invested in what you're doing, and you're going to be able to negotiate the way that you're working much more easily. So right now, my business partner, Rita, who's here, and I are working at a school called Wilmer Rudolph in Chicago. And they contacted me to find these services, and they've been super open to the way that we work. They've been very flexible with us for the most part. And they generally are really open to this method and aren't asking us to make a lot of changes. But it can be really difficult to get inquiries when you're just starting out. So this is something that over time, you'll probably get, if you're putting yourself out there as someone who provides services to schools, you'll probably get more and more inquiries over time. So just use your patience key. The second way you can be approached by school is indirectly. And that's an example of that is, as I was mentioning before, when my student's parent approached her school, and then that school contacted me. So it's a good way because they know that the parents are really interested in this, and they're probably going to have a lot of investment in bringing yoga into the school. However, you have to be careful when setting your expectations. So like I mentioned before, I was expecting to come in a contracting role. They offered me an employment role. I accepted, right? But it ended up being a little bit different than I was expecting. And they were asking me to do a lot of services that didn't have to do with yoga. And so, we just changed the relationship, which is fine, but just something to know that you may have to take some time to set the expectations for the school, since the parent really knows more about the method than the school does. So this may also be more effective when you're approaching schools that are private or charter. In the US, we have charter schools because they have a little bit more flexibility in programming, and they often have to compete for students. So they're really looking for, ways to have a competitive edge. So I would focus on that to start anyway. You can also approach schools yourself. So the next best way would be an indirect approach by you. And the way to do that would be by accessing a contact you have with a school member to get in contact with the school as a whole. It can be really successful if the contact that you have is really well connected in the school. So for example, the school that I was providing after school services for, I knew the Parent Teacher Association president. So she is very connected in this school and was able to really get the ear of the principal to get us in. But it can be difficult in any approach when you are approaching the school to build the program without a lot of effort on your own part, since neither the school nor your contact has direct experience with the method that you're providing. So you can enhance this approach. Oh, hopefully my internet is okay. I got a message it was unstable. You can enhance this approach by offering free classes for them, doing learning events for parents, or even volunteering at the school so that people start to get familiar with the method and get more interested in having it brought into their school. The way that I find is the least ideal way is by directly approaching the school for your services. Now, your mileage may vary. You may have a completely different experience, receptive to it, but in my experience, you have very little room to negotiate in this way. So I can give you an example. One time I approached a school that I thought would be a great fit for this method. And the very first thing that the principal said to me is, now, are you going to be doing any kind of Om? Are you going to talk about centering? Because you can't do any of that here. And I was like, whoa, like we can't even talk about centering ourselves. That is going to be hard to bring my method of yoga into the school if they're not even open to the idea of centering ourselves, right? So maybe fortunately for me, I didn't work with that school. But if you do want to reach out to schools this way, the best practice would be to contact the principal or the director to explain your services. Or you could look for a member of the therapy team, like an occupational therapist who would be really perhaps interested in this. And then send them a follow-up email with written resources about yoga for the special child. And if you don't have any, I have some. I'm happy to send them to you. I'll put my email down in the chat at the end, and feel free to email me and I'll send you all the resources we have. And you're welcome to share those with anybody you want. And then you can provide like a you would come in and do like a tour of the school and interview at the school, but I really discourage you from providing a sample class. And this is from my own experience. I made the mistake of providing a sample class. And what I learned is the environment is probably not going to be ideal. You're just coming in, you have no control over the space or which students are there. And it's going to be difficult to develop a connection with the students instantly, right? You're just meeting them for the first time. And sometimes it takes a little time to develop that connection. And it may reflect poorly on your capabilities. Whereas if you had given it, a few weeks, they might be astounded with what you're able to do because you've already built that connection with your students. So let's talk a little bit about developing the right environment in the school. So I would let the stakeholders, again, that's principals, teachers, staff, let them know what you need before your first class, ideally during the interview. This method can be successfully taught within a classroom, an already existing classroom, but I find that it's best if they can give you a permanent space that you have a little bit of control over so that there's no overstimulating elements, right? There's no toys all over the place. Maybe you can change the light so it's not harsh fluorescence. Maybe you can get some airflow going through and you can keep the environment quiet. But know that within a school, there are going to be some things you have to compromise on and just do your best. Ask for the doors to be closed. And I would provide signs that say, please enter quietly or do not disturb, because there's always people coming and going. They're used to just walking in and out. And if you have a reminder, a visual reminder on the door that says, something is happening in here, please enter quietly, it's going to help you maintain that really peaceful environment. I'd also recommend to ask for the lights to be lowered or even turned off if they're harsh. And I would recommend against bringing oils or incense into the classroom because some students are allergic. I've had students who are even allergic to lavender oil, and you just don't know who's there. And obviously with incense, they usually don't want you burning anything. But if there's a bad smell present in the classroom, you can troubleshoot with them for future classes. So for example, if they're eating food right before, maybe we can air it out before you come. And good airflow, especially nowadays, is really important. Make sure that the teachers know to prepare the space ahead of time. So that means chairs and desks are moved back so that there's enough space for you to be on the floor. Toys and distractions are put away or hidden. Mats or soft surfaces are already put down when you arrive so that you don't have to worry about using the limited amount of time you have with them, setting the environment up ahead of time. And the students should be in place on the mats with their shoes off, or if they have AFOs, those braces, the AFOs are off before you arrive. I would also provide clear expectations to the teachers that they need to remain present and participate in yoga, because if there's lots of people doing other stuff in the room, it's going to distract the kids and they're going to be really involved with what other people are doing. So if you can get the teachers to practice the yoga with you, it's going to be much more successful. Everything is going to be focused on you. The whole classroom is going to be participating. Now I'm speaking with groups, right? If you are working one-to-one, you just set up a separate space in the classroom. Ideally, it's separated visually. So perhaps you have something like a bookcase in between you. Oftentimes classrooms will have little segregated areas. You can move the child over to that classroom and work with them one-to-one. And then if you're working in a group class, I would provide a class that's appropriate for all children present, even if that means keeping things super basic. But children love to repeat things. So don't worry about being repetitious. Doing the same program again and again, they're going to learn and be able to develop, and you will learn their own capabilities and be able to give them challenges as is appropriate over time. Make sure to end your class a little bit early, maybe 5 minutes, to allow everyone to transition to the next thing. Especially if you're doing a group class, it's going to take some time to put the shoes back on, to get them up, to move the desks back. So give them a few minutes to do that so that they're not rushing to the next class or you're rushing to your next class. One of the other things I found helpful is you can put up signs in the room that say, everybody is quiet, everyone is calm. Those are the expectations. So one way that you can set your expectations is to offer a bonus professional development course at the beginning of the school year. And this would be a course where you are working with the teachers. Usually it's the week before school starts. They'll have a time where they have other providers come in and give talks, help them, develop professionally. So you can give a little bit of a talk to explain what you're doing and why. You can explain the history of yoga for the special child and each component that you're going to do so that they understand why you're doing the things you're doing. This is also a great time to explain, this is how I'm going to expect you to set up your classroom. I'm going to expect everyone to participate. And you can also, if you can't provide a PD, a professional development, before, you can always hand out a sheet of paper, right? You can send them something that says, this is what I'm going to expect from you. Just make sure we're all on the same table. Here's how you can get in contact with me. And that just sets everything off on the right foot. So I want to talk just a little bit about like troubleshooting, and then I'll give a few minutes for questions. So sometimes you'll get some pushback, right, from people who either haven't done yoga before or have some kind of conception about how yoga should be done, or have done yoga before, but they've done, kind of like a really athletic, like gym kind of yoga, right? Instead of the yoga that we know, where it's much more meditative, we're doing breathing, we're doing chanting, we're doing deep relaxation. So one of the challenges I've run across are people coming in and asking me to teach them how to teach yoga to kids. And if you remember, we're not certified to do that when we take the Part 1 program, right? When we take Part 1 and Part 2, we're only certified to teach kids, not adults, how to teach kids. So explain it to them that way. Say, I'm only certified to teach children. And so I can't, you can say, hey, I could lose my license for doing that. So just make sure that you're only teaching the kids and not the teachers, right? Because also it's going to be way too complicated and confusing for you to be, kids and adults learn in different ways. So how can you effectively teach a class where you're teaching the kids and the adult at the same time, right? You're teaching the kids yoga and the adults how to teach yoga at the same time. It's not going to work. If they're uncomfortable with a certain aspect of class, for example, mantras, I know that's a big buzzword, right? When we talk about mantras, people are really worried about bringing mantras into schools. And I'm going to have to thank Kathy Randolph for this, because this is all Kathy Randolph. You can explain to them that it's like teaching tennis, trying to teach tennis without a racket, right? You can't. Mantras are part of yoga. If they want you to provide activities that are not part of the method, for example, they want to have play, they want to have story time yoga, you can explain it's like trying to teach tennis with a basketball, right? Two different tools, both great, but they don't go together. If all else fails and they keep pushing you for things that you don't feel comfortable giving, but you still want to teach there for some reason, I'm not sure. You can explain to them that, okay, I can adjust to what you need. However, I have to be very clear that I am not teaching the yoga for the special child method. If you explain that this is not the yoga for the special child method, we're developing something else, maybe there's a way that you can work it out, right? But they cannot call it yoga for the special child if they're mixing lots of different things in. We're providing the method as is. It has, as Shiva Karmi says all the time, a very good reputation. We've never hurt anyone. It has amazing results, and we want to give people the full picture of what we're doing and why and what it can do, right? So the last thing I'll say is that all schools are different. So don't have any expectations and use your keys. So I have about 5 minutes here. I don't know if anyone has any questions. I'm happy to answer them. Yes, Jennifer.
Have you noticed a difference? Have you gone into the middle schools? Have you gone into the high schools? Public versus private? Have you noticed any difference in practicing?
Great question. I have worked in, so I worked in the charter school that I worked as a full-time employee. It was from, I want to say, kindergarten to 12th grade. So the whole range of schools. Other than that, I've mostly worked in high schools or grade schools. I don't know that there's a huge difference in terms of how you work with the school, but there is definitely a difference in the way that you work with the kids, right? Like older kids tend to like to feel like you're their equal and you're really listening to them. I mean, all kids want to feel like they're listening to them, of course, but little kids need a little bit more direction, right? A little bit more authority. And teenagers really like to feel like you look at them like an equal. At least that's been my experience. Middle schoolers are a really special breed because sometimes they're like little adults and sometimes they're like kids, right? And they switch like that all of a sudden. So I would just say be flexible with them. And then for the second part of the question, I have been really surprised at how open public schools have been in our area in Chicago. They've reached out to us a lot more than private schools have, but depending on the area you're in, you may find the opposite.
Right. Okay, thank you.
My pleasure. And I see another chat in here. Juhi. I teach special yoga in schools as Goa as a volunteer, and I can relate to a lot of what you say. Well, I'm glad, Juhi. Nice to see you from the other side of the world. Last time I saw you, you were in India. Does anybody else have any questions? I'm going to add my email here to the chat. So if you have any questions, or if you would like those resources I was mentioning, I'd be happy to send you the resources that we have. I'm always available to speak with you about at least my experience. I've only worked with some schools, so I can give you some ideas, but as I said, each school is going to be really unique. So just have to be flexible.
Daphne, let me unmute you. There you go.
Yes, yeah. Just a little thing to add. I think I'm teaching at a regular school maybe for 3 years now, and they always ask me just for a period of time, like 4 weeks in a row, because they have like special occasions for theater, filming, photography, yoga, so the kids can just enroll them themselves. So it's really nice because you have them because they're really motivated. So they're like between 8 and 12 kids. And every time when I come back, you know, you have your classroom, you tell them that has to be clean and nice, and you have your space, you bring your mat. And it's really nice because they coming back every time, or you have new kids. And yeah, they know you make agreements about what kind of amount you will receive. It's clear, and it's really nice because it's also a nice way to go into the schools and just the regular schools, and then it's the same method, of course, what we teach. So it's very nice. Just a little thing to add.
Oh, that's a great idea. I love that. And like you were saying, they're really motivated because they sign up.
Really, that's true. Yeah.
I found that's, you know, when someone is reaching out to you for services, they're going to be much more motivated than if you're reaching out to them, right? So be patient. Thank you, Shiva Kami.
Thank you also very much. Thank you, Shanti, for this. A lot of really good information. That is true. I actually worked in a gifted school and I work with elementary school kids. So you are like in a different spectrum. The kids are quite smart, and having the support, like you said, the teacher would sit down with me and take the class. And it's not that she was the teacher, I was the boss. So whatever I said, they say, you have to follow the teacher, and whatever she says, you are doing. She was more like, you better stay quiet and follow her. And she was really, really supportive. I taught in the schools until up before the pandemic. And unfortunately, she decided to early retire because of the pandemic. So I haven't made my way back to schools yet. But it was really nice and interesting to use the method for gifted kids. And I would go into really complex things and always relate it and call their attention how yoga could help, like to calm them down when they're about to take a test, or how, or you know, like you need math for that. So you also do, so I would always be relating with subjects that they're supposed to be learning at school and trying to help them to relax when they need to take a test. So activating the parasympathetic nervous system to calm down, and those exercises, and how the brain works better when you can breathe well. And I would invoke those things for them to think about it as well. And it was quite interesting. They responded really well. And my first group graduated this summer. It was the first group that I work with, and they're 12th graders, so they graduated and going to school. And a lot of them still say, "Hi, Miss Gertner, hi, Miss Gertner," the whole way. So it was very nice. And I did have that, Darshini, because I taught volunteer in the morning as a teacher into the classroom. So all the kids have to do it. But then I have a yoga club after school activity where the kids come if they want. And I was only for second graders. So as the time goes, they keep coming back until they were in middle school. And they keep coming for the yoga club because they like it so much. So they'll come. So they'll do 2 times a week. And then after that, they have to come just for the yoga club when they're in the different grade. But I had kids follow me up to high school. So it was very nice to have them together. It was very beautiful. So I hope you guys have that chance to do that too. See, David, you have the ability. There we go.
Thank you. Just a very quick one to add. That was brilliant. Thank you, Shanti. Just wanted to add one thing that I thought it might be useful as well. When I teach in schools, at the end of the school year, because, you know, with term 1, term 2, term 3, but we work towards a choreography with the kids. And then at the last week, the parents come in and we do the class as we do the class. And then for the last 10 minutes of the class, the parents can come in, and then with a piece of music we show. And the choreography is basically each child presenting the position that they like the most. And then I line them up, and everyone, you know, I give a cue of who to do when, what. And then parents absolutely love it. And it's such a great way of, you know, that self-esteem and really showing what they love. It really supports the children, and it's just to watch the interaction afterwards, the beauty of this beautiful joy and celebration of achievement is really fantastic. And the kids work very hard towards it. It's something that they look forward to and practice. Very often they practice at home the position as well before they show, and that really has been a useful tool to bring into schools.
That's beautiful.
All right. Dashini?
Yeah, so maybe it's also nice when you have like a period of like 3-4 weeks that you invite the teacher, maybe then also, and that last part, that's what Sridevi was saying. It's maybe also nice when I'm thinking about it, when Sridevi was saying it, like to invite the teacher, because then they also know a little bit what you're doing during the class.
All right, my dear one. So thank you, Shanti, so very much for this talk. I'm sure that people are going to take a lot of ideas here that we are able to keep spreading yoga for the special child. So thank you again. We now have a little break, but that break is like a getting together. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop the recording and